So in order to come to some sort of conclusion of my work with this theme of early people, I wanted to do something using the three-dimensional figure that I'd made, and I'd like to use it to make some drawings. And of course there are all sorts of precedents with this in art. Poussin rather, made little wax figurines and built theatres and lit them. Degas as well, you'll know, made wax and clay sculptures of his ballerinas, and that enabled him to draw what would have been very tricky poses for the models to have held for a sustained time. And I think one of the things I'm partly inspired by some of your work, people using lighting and setting things up, presenting their sculptures and their work in different ways, thinking perhaps a little bit about the museum context as well. So I think working with light could be useful. So I started a bit like this, and what I want to do is build up some sort of drawing using my hunter, seen from different angles. So I might have about 3 hunters, but then when I thought it through, I thought really I don't want to be looking down on them. I'd quite like to look, straight across. So I want to possibly turn these figures into a more convincing. I don't know yet whether I want them to appear to be real, or is it a bit like the sort of Nutcracker with the toys coming to life in the museum at night. Well, not the toys, but the artifacts. So anyway, I set this up so that they'd be a bit more at eye level, and just to have some sort of background. I then find it casts a shadow in a different way, almost like on the wall of the cave, as it were. And so that's what I'm going to work with. I have a bit of a problem here, though, because you'll see once a lot of this light gets reflected back at the camera, it might start flickering. Anyway, this is my plan. I'm going to work with ink and wash, and I'm going to put about 3 figures on to my drawing, and I might, if it works out, I might put an animal in the foreground. So I'm going to put them in the sort of animal's eye view position. So let's see, I'll get my materials and make a start. So I think the ink and wash is ideal for this sort of dramatic light. It's also what Poussin used, actually, because he would make little stages. I can think of a particular image of the Holy Family, where he had made some sort of stage, lit it, I think, with lots of candlelight, and then produced effectively a tonal drawing in ink and wash with nicely exaggerated light. So basically a theatrical approach. Now, I know some people were struggling at the museum with how to draw artifacts that themselves maybe weren't particularly refined, the kind of a primitive piece of artwork. How do you make it convincing? If you draw it well, is that the solution? But I don't have that problem here, because my primitive little figurine, actually, it could do with a bit of improving. I'll see, but I'll draw what I see for the time being, because I'm more interested in just finding the composition. So I'm doing that technique of drawing the lines first, and I haven't refined them. I haven't given a face, so I'm going to decide about that as I go along, because in a way I'm quite happy that this is a pretty simplified figure. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to put some wash onto the figure, and I'm also going to work with this shadow on the wall, because I think there's something in that I can use. So now that my ink line is dry, I've got some wash, which is dilute ink, on a piece of sponge, and I'm just going to block in some of the shadows. Actually, I think with this view, quite a lot of my figure is lit, a little bit of shadow on the side. So I'm putting on tone to the figure, and that happens quite quickly. Don't know if he should be a bit crinkled as well, but I think the tone might come into its own a bit more with what I do with the shadow back here. So I'm applying this, so this is wash, it's dilute ink, and I'm applying it with a piece of sponge, which I think is a good way of enabling me to be a little bit loose, getting some atmosphere. So hopefully that towering shadow behind the hunter will terrify the hunted, or might remind him of monks painting puberty, I wonder. Anyway, so there we go. That's that figure. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I think I've positioned my first figure maybe not in the best place. I really would like a sequence so of the middle, the next one will be facing and the other will be facing in the other direction. So I might have to reorganize my composition a little bit next. So a little bit of cut and paste. I think I want to move that figure over, and I think I should also vary the scale a bit. So I think I'll make the central figure, try and make him a bit bigger. I'm keeping the heads on the same line. And I've actually just kept the same pose because I half broke his arm last time. I didn't want to risk any more of that, but it might be a possibility to adjust the figures a bit. You might, if you're doing something like this, you might not be, you might have a completely different plan. But I wanted to make use of the three-dimensional work. And actually I just love this theatrical approach, using lighting, using, a bit of, well, not quite dressing up, but yeah, something more theatrical is what I've been after here. So that spear goes over there. So same approach. I mean, sometimes doing these ink and wash drawings, it's quite good to do the wash first. But I think at the moment I'm just trying to work out a composition. That's maybe not very good that their spears cross. But what I do think is quite good is to take this approach and not know exactly how things are going to work out, and have some surprises along the way. So let me leave that to dry, and I'll put the wash onto that, modelling the figure and also putting on the shadow on the wall. So I'll put the wash onto this one. It's not actually completely dry, so I might find some of it bleeds. And I've not drawn it very well, so that's good. Don't have to worry about drawing something primitive too well. And then I think he probably needs a bigger shadow. Is that right? He's nearer the light, so we can definitely see his spear. That's creating new issues. How do we handle the size of shadows? depending on the position of figures. Anyway, things are working in some ways. I'm happy to have the two figures. It's a shame that their spears are clashing, but I'll do one more and I think I'll make the third one smaller. So I've made my third figure a little bit smaller. I'll put some wash onto that one. Now, it was never my intention that this would be comic, but it's beginning to look like the sort of hunting party you wouldn't accept an invitation to join, because there could be, well, mass casualties, I think, but among the hunters rather than the prey. Anyway, you've got to try it, and then if things don't work, then usually you can work out what it is. And I think I need a different arrangement. I think they're probably just turned in too many directions. I mean, I'm very happy with the shadows on the wall, because that was a surprise with my spotlights. I think I'll just change the camera angle a bit, because if it gets too much of a reflection from the paper, it'll start doing that. So bring it over here. So this is what I've put together with the three figures. I'm quite pleased with that. And I did an ink and wash Pictish boar, so I'm going to put that in there, I think. Maybe have it coming over here on its way across. I'll try something like that. I'm going to stick it down, and then I'm going to finish with a little bit of colour. So I'm still discovering where this is going, but I thought I would try a little bit of colour, and I thought I would go back to the Etruscan greens. See what that did. And I find what can be quite good with ink and wash is that you can kind of colour in, actually, and let the wash show through and give you a little bit of contrast. I could smudge them a bit, maybe, and then I might put on some lighter colour. So yes, I'm still discovering where this is going. Are they going to be figurines in a museum? Or are they going to be... Is this the basis for something more realistic? I haven't worked that out yet. But what I've tried to do is put my three-dimensional work into a two-dimensional piece. I've tried to use multiple versions of them in order to explore some kind of composition. And I think actually what I probably would do next time is I wouldn't do it on white paper. Although white is quite nice for the ink and the wash, it takes it very well. I think I might have started on some sort of tinted paper, because then I like the idea that this could be a cave wall and they could be inside their cave. So there are some ideas on using the three-dimensional work to create something two-dimensional, and also perhaps ideas to do with lighting your three-dimensional work, and ultimately, presenting. How can you present the material that you've gathered and you've transformed into a work of art? How can that be best presented to convey something about the subject? Okay, well, see you tomorrow.